page of Brachos by telling us that there's one opinion that a Torah scholar, because they're constantly studying, doesn't need to read the evening Shema before going to bed. It's enough that they already said it as part of Maariv. Abaya, okay, so Abaya, on the other hand, says even a Talmud Chacham has to say one pasuk, and Kigon, Biyadcha afkid ruchi padisa osi Hashem kel emes, which means that I give my ruach, my soul, as almost like when you give to a bank, when you go to a bank and you give them something of value, they put it in your what's the name of the thing that you put it in? Safe deposit box. You give your soul back to God like you'd put it in a safe deposit box for God to watch for you, and God is a God of truthfulness. So the question is, why does Abaya say that you should say a verse, particularly this verse? And the answer is that what we're trying to do in this prayer before bedtime is there's a certain anxiety about going to sleep, a lack of control, but the antidote to that fear is knowing that you are letting go and God is, so to speak, catching you. Part of the reason why we have the anxiety is because we like to be in control, and when we're asleep, we're not in control. But if you truly have faith, God is the banker, the safest bank, the safest safe deposit box is God, who takes our soul when we're asleep, and He stores our soul for us. And there's a beautiful medrash that says normally when you give a safekeeping to somebody, there's a good chance you're going to get it back. It's going to have been used. It's not going to be the same quality as when you gave it to them. But to the contrary, when we give our souls back to God at night, we have a fresh day the next morning. When we wake up, the souls return to us and we are all the better. So that's why we say that particular verse. And that's number one of the top teachings. Okay, the number two is very interesting. What do we do about our instinct if it is bothering us and making us want to do something that we shouldn't be doing? So Rabbi Chama, the name of Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish, says, I'll read it inside, La'olam yargiz adam yetzer tov al yetzer hara, shneimar yagziv al techtao. A person should use their Yetzer Tov, their good inclination, and get it upset at their evil inclination in order not to sin. In other words, there's a story of a chassid who would say, my arrogance kept me from sinning. And they said, what do you mean your arrogance? He says, every time I wanted to sin, I would say, I'm considered the number one chassid of this great Rebbe, and how could the top chassid of a great Rebbe like me sin? And that would always stop me from sinning. So in that sense, arrogance or judgment of yourself sometimes will be the thing that stops you from sinning. The Gemara goes further and says, if you are victorious over your evil inclination, which, by the way, it's not that your inclination is evil per se, it's neutral, but it can lead you towards evil if the thing you act upon is truly evil. Like in Judaism, we usually say intentions are not the issue; it's action. But the reality is, those who study Chassidut know that at a certain point, with enough kind of relinquishing of your will to your intention, to your impulse, the action will just follow almost automatically. So if you want to stop yourself, if you want to have some self-restraint, you need to kind of win the battle, the internal battle with the Yetzer Hara. And if that first step helps you be victorious, great. But if not, a Yasuk b'Torah, you should study Torah. Shenemar imru bilvavchem al, like a verse says, study Torah, because that's the continuation of that verse. In nischu mutav, im lav yikra kriya shema. If that works, great. If not, you should read this Shema. I'm going to explain this, so don't worry. Shenemer al mishkavchem. If that works great, you should mention the day of death. Okay, Shenemer v'do musela. Okay, so let me explain that. This is how the Ishbitzer Rebbe explains it. Basically, the Torah of Chassidut, but it's really also the Torah of the Gemara. And that's why Chassidus sometimes explains really what the Gemara is actually saying. And those who learn Chassidus, particularly the way the Lubavitcher Rebbe taught that the essence of the Torah of Chassidus is Lishana es Teva Midosav, is to change a person's nature, will understand that this is a very important part of Torah, this concept of changing a person's nature. So let's reevaluate what this, it's not just a kind of magical formula, anger yourself over your Yetzer Hara and great, and if that doesn't work, study Torah, and if that doesn't work, mention the day of death. It actually has a very deep meaning of what it actually means, and this is how the Meir Shiloach, the Ishbitzer, explains it. Let's say you have a desire to do something, but on a simple level, it seems like that thing that you want to do is not really 100% kosher. But you really want it. And the question is, and this is a real question in Ishbitz, when is there ever a time when the thing that you want doesn't have a glad kosher hechsher on it? I mean, for example, I had a young man came to talk to me today, and he asked, I'll only say it because hopefully nobody knows, because nobody was listening to the conversation. He wanted to know about whether he's gotten close to the Chabad community the last few years. He doesn't come from a Chabad family per se, and he grew a beard. And he wanted to know about whether he should trim his beard, shave his beard, actually. And I told him, I don't really know you, and we just met. I don't feel like I can, guide you and help you in this question. And he shared a lot of insights with me about who he is in about a 25-minute talk that we had. And we're going back and forth, like why he's bothered by having it, and why he's even talking to me about it, and why he can't talk to his regular Chabad rabbis about it. So we're having this real conversation. So the Ishbitzer says sometimes, you don't know if like this whatever it is, this guy's beard, he has a reason why he wants to take it off in his mind psychologically. But then again, he's grown, he's grown at the last years. He didn't grow up like that, and so he's struggling. So the Ishbitzer says, like, what do you do when something like that happens, where clearly, he adopted a stricter custom, the rulings of the Tzemach Tzedek and the Kabbalists are very much into leaving the beard, but there are other there's other halachic authorities, many, perhaps even the majority, that allow you to do certain things in certain ways to your beard, and it's a valid conversation. So the question is, let's say a guy like that is having a question like this, how would you answer that question? So here's how the Meir Shiloach would answer it. This is wild stuff. He actually uses this paradigm that the Gemara here in Brachos Daf Hey uses. Okay, he says like this. Here's what you should first do. First thing you should do is you should use your Yetzer Tov over your Yetzer Hara. What does that mean? As the Yetzer Hara is generally the impulse of the moment. And the Yetzer Tov is the bigger picture. And actually what I told this guy, I said, what about your grandchildren? Like, how do you think it would affect your grandchildren, you having a beard or you not having a beard? And you know what he answered me? He answered me something, I cut right in with that question. He said, if I'm angry about having it, I don't think it'll help my grandchildren that I have a beard and they know that I don't I start not appreciating religion because I'm doing things that I don't really want to do. I'm like, interesting. So when I scratched the surface a little bit, but that's what really the Gemara is talking about is, let's say you say, this is not, even my grandchildren, leave my grandchildren out of this because I'm not sure this is good for my grandchildren for me to have the beard. I meant like maybe it'll be better. You'll be more religious. Your children, your grandchildren will be more religious because you keep the beard on. And he was saying, not really, not if I'm unhappy about that level of observance, right? So that didn't work, meaning that. So then what's the next thing? What's the next stage in this thing? Is Yasok b'Torah. You should study Torah. What does that mean? It doesn't just mean read the Parsha. The Ishbitzer says what it means. You got like this is real stuff, people. This learning that we're doing is about what learning really is supposed to be. And this is what Torah is really supposed to be. So this is what the Ishbitzer says is, listen to me. You're looking for a wife, and you talk to this young woman, and she's beautiful and she's smart, and you're like crazy about how special she is, that she's married, and you're like, holy bananas, this is the first woman that you just like find perfect in every way, and she's married, right? Okay, oh yeah, what do you do? You're getting really like you're struggling with what do you do? You have these feelings, she's amazing, and yet she's married. Somebody tells you, guess what? She has a twin who's just as gorgeous as her and even smarter than she is. So what do? You get her number. She's the one. That's what the Torah is. The Torah is the single twin sister of the married sister. That's what the Meshulach, that's my own analogy, but the insight is based on the Meshulach. Meaning, the Torah tells you the permitted way to have which would otherwise be forbidden. Okay? In fact, we have a special yeshiva, and what we do at the yeshiva is we teach the guys in the yeshiva how to understand the depth of Torah, to find ways in difficult situations to help people in life. So that's really the second thing, that if the person really wants something, so let's say this young guy is interested in going out with women because he wants to date women, and he feels the having this long Chabad beard is not the type of women he necessarily wants to date, doesn't want to limit himself. So then the question is, right, Yasok b'Torah, meaning where can I get what I want to get that is completely kosher, right? So that's, and if that works, great. But if that still doesn't work, if you're still left with the desire to do what it is that you want to do, and you can't, the other alternative in the Torah, the more kosher version doesn't suit you, you tried, you figured it out, and it's not the right thing for you, then what do? Yasker Yom HaMisa. Then you have to think about death. You have to really think about the finality of this life, which we're going to talk about more on the thing. And if that still remains, then maybe that's a change that's real for you. That isn't just like a whim. It's not just your Yetzer Hara. So according to the Ishbitzer Rebbe, this thing is to help you resolve a questionable situation where it's not clear, it's not such a simple yes or no in your life, and to know what's real for you, and that helps you with this. Okay, now we're going to continue with number 2. Oh, that was number 2, what to do with your Yetzer Hara, strategies of how to deal with your impulse. Number 3 is about the Torah. Was it all really given at Sinai? The Gemara says that on the verse, Rav Shimon ben Lakish says, "My dichsiv ve'et luchos ha'evan v'atorah v'mitzvah asher kasafti larosam." What is the meaning of this verse? So the Gemara interprets it: luchos, the tablets, elas haras hadibros. Those are the 10 tablets. Torah zeh mikra, the word Torah that refers to the Chumash. V'ha-mitzvah, the word mitzvah, zu Mishnah, that's the Mishnayos. Asher kasafti, that I've written, that this is a verse in the 24th chapter of Exodus. Elu Nevi'im, and this is again a word-by-word interpretation of the Gemara. Those are the prophets, Ksuvim, the prophets and the writings. La Rosam ze Gemara. That's to teach them. That's the Gemara. Melamed shekulam nitnu lemoshe mi Sinai. That comes to teach us that all of these things were given to Moshe at Sinai. The question is that actually accurate? Did Moshe go up to Sinai and get everything that the rabbis in the Gemara and the Mishnayos would say? There's really different ways of understanding it. There were certainly some Gaonim and Rishonim that seem to understand it kipshuto, that God, there's even a whole discussion of what about when there was a machlokis, and there's one opinion that says Moshe got a machlokis also. He got the debates between the different rabbis, Abai and Rava, Rabbi Yochanan Rish Lakish. Moshe got it all. But there's another understanding, and that understanding is that Moshe got the Rashi Prakim. Moshe got like the seeds that, I don't want to use that word seeds because I think Mordechai Kaplan uses that analogy. So that's taken already. But Moshe got the principles that, based on those principles, the rest of the Torah could be extrapolated from. But it's not that like literally every word of the Torah, the way we have it today in the Art Scroll, God wrote the Art Scroll version of the Gemara. No, God gave the Torah that had the principles, the core, that would extend into the entirety of the Torah. I have a lot to say about this because I believe that you can really only believe in Torah if you have like I hate to say this, if you have a relationship with God. In other words, the relationship with all of Torah being given at Sinai, I actually don't believe happened in the past. I believe it is still happening. Meaning, some people think it's a point in history and it began and continues because we have this tradition from that. I don't believe that. I really believe that there was a point in history that started something that's still very much alive. So I had the merit to experience the Torah being given to the people of Israel in my lifetime. I saw it. So I know all of the Torah is part of God's gift to the Jewish people. That's my personal vision that I was able to see. And so I believe this is very true, not just something that happened. I think it's still happening. But anyway, again, that's something that you may or may not experience, but definitely studying Torah should bring you joy. And you should believe it, even if you don't experience it personally. You should believe what this Gemara says. Whether you believe it on a more literal level or a less literal level, that's fine. They're both acceptable ways of understanding it. Number 4 is a very, very, very difficult part of the daf, which is this concept of Yisurim Shel Ava, which means suffering out of God sometimes afflicts people, but it's known as affliction out of love. Okay. So let me look at a little bit of Gemara here. Okay, the Gemara says that if a person sees that they're having hardships, they should look into themselves. Yifashrish mamaisav. They should do self-examination about it, if they're doing the right things in life. Let's say they look and they don't find anything to blame it on, so then perhaps it has to do with bittul Torah, with neglecting Torah, bittul Torah, and it brings a proof text for that. But if that's not it, in other words, a person who really is on the right level, they should know biyadua sheyisurin shel avahein, that the afflictions are afflictions of divine love. Okay, now what is this idea of afflictions of divine love? It's very hard to understand. Okay, so let me first backtrack this a little bit to this concept of what it would mean that the affliction is coming because a person hasn't properly been studying Torah. So this is based on a teaching that I learned from Rabbi Nachman Likutei Moharan, but I've also kind of experienced a little bit personally. So this it's powerful stuff. Rabbi Nachman says that certain life lessons that we learn can in theory be learned in other ways. I think the Baal Shem Tov also says this as well, if I'm not mistaken. So, for example, let's say a rich person, and the rich person sees these poor people, and the rich person just doesn't really feel any empathy from them. They're like alien creatures to the rich person, and now I know a lot of very wealthy people who are full of empathy. They're just really kind-hearted and good people, but occasionally you meet like a wealthy person. There's one particular person that I'm thinking about that, like, they have so much money and just no like empathy. Like they just don't get it, right? They just don't feel like they have an opportunity to give tzedakah. They just don't, they don't want to. They can't be bothered. And we're talking about, people they know and institutions that have benefited from them, but they don't have any feeling for it. They just have no connection in their heart. So the bottom line is that the Torah teaches us to care for the poor person, to have empathy, but it's just words. The person could read the Torah and not feel the need to care for the poor or for the needy. So Rabbi Nachman says God will then teach them a lesson. God will make that person vulnerable. God will give them an opportunity to feel poor. God will make that person feel what it's like not to have something. It could be through their health. It could be through their finances. It could be in so many ways. And that becomes a wake-up call to make that person sensitive. Rabbi Nachman's point is that the person didn't have to go through that, but almost shows because they wouldn't learn it on their own. They refused to learn it from a book, so they had to learn it from a life lesson. So I'm not understanding it so much here as a simple God is punishing people, but it's opportunity for learning about sensitivity. So that's perhaps one way of understanding is that anything it says that what is not Yisurim Shel Ava, what is not a hardship that comes from divine love. The Gemara says that something that is so difficult and so harsh that it takes you away from being able to study Torah. Meaning, if the point of the hardship on some level is that you should be able to learn something from it, if you actually can no longer learn properly, so then it's not God's love anymore. So it's got to be harsh, but not too harsh. And there has to be a lesson in it. In other words, if it's making you a better person, then you could say it's like a parent reprimanding a child, and the child feels yelled at, but it's really because the parent loves the child, right? If I really love my child, that's my problem, I don't love my children enough to reprimand them. Some of them, but others, I don't reprimand them enough. And it's because I'm lazy, because I want to just love with love only without giving musar. But sometimes some of your kids, when they're doing the wrong thing, they need musar. So God is, so to speak, like reprimanding us, but it's not because he hates us, it's because he loves us. But we have to be able to feel that, in order to feel that we're being reprimanded out of love, we have to feel very close to him, and we have to feel that there's some lesson in it. And that's really what this Gemara is all about, is feeling that lesson. Anyway, it's very interesting. It's something we should delve into more in our lives to try to understand lessons that we learned. We just talked about, we read this morning in the shul, about Joseph. There's a great teaching. The Mei Shiloach, again, one of my favorites, says, the brothers, for example, might have been saying, how could God put us in this predicament? And who is this guy? He's like the worst Nazi, Joseph, the viceroy of Egypt. They didn't know it was his brother. But in a moment, it'd all be revealed what it was really all about. It's really, God was behind it all. And also Jacob could have been complaining, how could God have done this to me and taken my son, my favorite son? But really, behind it all, Joseph was being set up to become the second most powerful person in the world and to save them all in the years of famine. So again, when we see something that looks terrible, the question is, do we know what's behind it? Right? And there's a famous story of Rabbi Akiva, that God does things for the best. I'm not going to tell you the story now. That's in another part of the Gemara. Okay, now we're going to do number 5. 3 things that come through hardship: Torah, Eretz Yisrael, and Olam Haba. Okay? Why do these 3 things come only through hardship? So I think the answer is that Torah that we're talking about is really acquiring Torah. And acquiring Torah takes a long time just to study. But another element of it is Torah is to change yourself, to make yourself a better person. And that part of Torah is even harder. One of the big Balei Musar says it's harder to go through the whole Talmud than to change just one negative attribute and make it a better. So the Torah that we're talking about here is studying, but it's also studying in a way that like affects who you are. It's not just book learning, and that's really hard. It's real work. Now, why is Eretz Yisrael so hard? The Gemara brings proof text to prove the point, but the idea here is that Eretz Yisrael is a very powerful place, and to be in Eretz Yisrael, we're going to talk about that in number 6, requires an extra level of kedusha, of holiness and purity to deal with the living in kedushas haaretz, in the Holy Land. And the third thing, Olam Haba. Again, the idea of Olam Haba is that you're needing to overcome. You need to overcome the temptations of this world to be able to merit Olam Haba. So there's a lot of. It's the ultimate in sacrificing your short-term gratification for long-term gratification, and that's an act that requires self-discipline that borders on very difficult and challenging yourself and very much. Number 6, which is connected to number 5, or at least I'll connect them, is there a law of Mitzorah in Israel today? Now, what does this have to do with the Gemara? The Gemara here says that one of the things that may be or may not be Yisurim Shal Ava, depending on where you live, is tsaras. We translate tsaras as leprosy. It may not actually be leprosy. So what is this? What is the machlokas? And so the Gemara, according to Rashi, explains that in Eretz Yisrael, somebody who has this skin discoloration has to leave the Batei Arechoma, not the Batei Arechoma, the Arechoma, the walled cities, even today. And in other places, they don't have to leave. So if you live in Eretz Yisrael and you have tsaras, so then it's not Yisurim Shal Ava because your life is difficult. You have to leave your town. So that's what Rashi says. Rabbi Soloveitchik in Rishim Shiurim talks about it, and I'll just read a little bit. He says, "Lefizeh Yitachem del Rashi din shiluach hamitzara dechol midin pirsam hamitzara noeg bechefsa shel batei arechama ve'ena toli b'kedushas batei arechama." It's more dependent on the place of the Batei Arechama, of that walled city, not so much of its holiness. You have a physical walled city in Eretz Yisrael, you can't be a mitzvah living in that city. V'chol din shiluach hamitzar mi Batei Arechama b'zman hazeh, afa pi she'ein hayovel noeg. Okay, Batei Kedushas Batei Arechama. Basically, amazing that even till today, there's certain principles of, not all the principles, but some of them, of being sent out of a certain camp, so to speak, of a Batei Arechama, that you wouldn't be able to be in Eretz Yisrael till today. That's connected to that other point in number 5 of Eretz Yisrael. Acquiring Eretz Yisrael is difficult. We know it's difficult politically. Militarily, we see the hardships that until today, everyday life in Israel, the military faces tremendous challenges. We see that all the time. But in addition to that, there's a certain Kedusha in Eretz Yisrael, which might mean why we see there's like always fights between the so-called Datiim and Chilonim. I don't like those terms, but there's almost like it becomes politicized religion, but at the core of it is that there's such a tension because of the fervor that Eretz Yisrael brings out, and there is definitely a religious fervor there. It's intense, it's hot, the Kedusha of Eretz Yisrael, and not everybody can handle it. And that might be part of number 5 and 6. So number 7 is Ein Chavish Mater Asma, which means somebody who's in jail can't break themselves out, and that's a story where Rabbi Yochanan, who's this amazing personality that we're going to be talking a bit about, has a bunch of interactions where he asks people who are very sick a series of questions, and then the final question is, do you want this illness? Because if you don't, come and get up. And he would like take them by the hand and they'd stand up. And I guess it's the closest thing that we Jews have to, like faith healing or something. But there's a story where Rabbi Yochanan himself was sick, and he needed somebody else to come visit him to encourage him to make him feel better. And the question is, Rabbi Yochanan was practically able to perform all these miracles for other people. Why couldn't he just do the miracle and get up himself? Meaning, if he knew the psychological trick of healing your body through your soul or whatever it is that he did, why couldn't he do that on himself? And the Gemara says, Ein chavish mater atzmo, somebody who's in prison cannot free themselves. But that's a very powerful and simple and all-around concept, which is a lot of times in life, as a rabbi, for example, I could help a lot of other people. That doesn't mean that I'm a tzaddik. That doesn't mean that I don't have my own problems that I struggle with, and I might need a rabbi of my own to help me. I can't always be my own rabbi. In other words, a doctor might be able to heal all of their patients, but a doctor might become a patient themselves, and they can't operate on themselves. So we often know psychologically we can be there for other people and do amazing things for other people, but that doesn't mean we can do it all yourself. You can't break yourself out of prison. Very important concept. So therefore, we need colleagues, friends, and so on and so forth to address that. Okay, let's continue with number 8, which is Rabbi Yochanan, Stoic or Saint. Okay, who is Rabbi Yochanan? There's a very interesting discussion. The Gemara has a protracted discussion here on Daf Hey, but I'm going to take you to another Gemara. I'm forgetting which Daf it is and which Masechta, because I have a terrible memory. But there's a story of Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish. The story is that Rabbi Yochanan was bathing in a river, and he was very beautiful. And I think there was something about his skin that was just kind of like lit up. And Rish Lakish, who was a bandit at that time, saw someone bathing. He thought it was a woman, supposedly, according to the Gemara. And he jumped huge leap to get to this woman. And then he was like, oh, damn it, it's a man. And they had this whole interchange, and Rabbi Yochanan said, wow, you could use that power to be a Torah scholar. And Rish Lakish says, you should have used your beauty as a woman. Rabbi Yochanan said, I have a sister that's more beautiful than I am. If you study Torah, I'll give you to her as a wife. And that's what happened. They became inseparable. Rabbi Yochanan first was his teacher, then they were like almost equals. They always argued. But it didn't end well. And at the end, Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish were arguing about the final stages of when a sword is finished. It has to do with when the sword would become susceptible to ritual impurity. And Rabbi Yochanan said, when the guy banging it at the silversmith finishes his last knock, and Rish Lakish says no, when he would kind of shine it with water, finish it with running water over it to make it nice and shiny. And Rabbi Yochanan couldn't help himself and said, oh, well, I guess a bandit knows his wares, like he was referencing Rish Lakish's earlier life as a bandit. And Rish Lakish got offended and he said, I don't know what you really did for me. I was called a Rebbe. It was called like a master amongst thieves, and now I'm called a master amongst rabbis. What did you help? Rabbi Yochanan got more offended at that statement, and he said, what do you mean, what did I help you? I brought you under the Shechina, And because of the Kepeda, because of this kind of anger that Rabbi Yochanan had against Rish Lakish for saying what he said, he cast some type of, evil eye, something on him, and he got sick. And Rabbi Yochanan's sister said, please pray for my husband, for my sake, for my children's sake. And Rabbi Yochanan refused to pray for them. Okay, now let me go back to this Gemara. This Gemara says that Rabbi Yochanan was known as somebody who lost 10 children, and he would carry around a little bone of this 10th child. And if he would meet somebody who had terrible suffering, he would try to comfort them, and if nothing worked, one of his things in his toolkit, he would take out this little bone and said, listen, all 10 of my, I don't know if it was all or not, it doesn't say all, I don't know, 10 of my children were taken from me, and this is all this is what I carry around to remember that, and yet I still have faith in God, and so on. So my question is, the Gemara proves from that somebody losing children could be Yisurim Shel Ava. And this, I believe it's there's Rashi, and I think Tosfos. There's Rashi and another commentary that explain why. Rashi explains that Rabbi Yochanan was a holy Jew, and God wouldn't afflict him with suffering that wasn't out of love. I believe that's Rashi. Pretty sure that's what Rashi said. And I think it was Tosfos, or maybe it was one of the other commentaries that say that Rabbi Yochanan wouldn't go around showing people, trying to show people this if it wasn't Yisurim Shel Ava. So, but my question is, was Rabbi Yochanan a saint or was he a stoic? Meaning, all these terrible things happened to him, but he was just stoic. He just accepted that this is what God does, and he's not going to question it. Now, but what's wrong? Isn't a stoic the same as a saint, right? A stoic is just somebody who accepts the reality and doesn't get upset about it. Why wouldn't he be a saint? I'll tell you why. Because when his sister came to beg him to pray for the recovery of his brother-in-law, Rish Lakish, he refused. To him, it was a fait accompli that Rish Lakish was going to die because he insulted, in his opinion, Torah learning, not just Rabbi Yochanan, but also being part of a Torah community in his statement. And therefore, to him, the whatever happens. He's not going to try to intercede and pray for it. That's not a saint. That's a stoic. So that's a good question. I'm just putting it out there. I don't know the answer. You guys can figure it out whether he was a saint or a stoic, a little bit of both. Definitely a tragic figure. He went crazy. The rabbis prayed that he should die after he went crazy because of causing his brother-in-law's death. So this is a very interesting Gemara here, but an even more interesting Gemara somewhere else that talks about this love affair and that ended in tragedy between Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish. Number 9 is two modalities of prayer in space. That's on Daf Hey Amud Beis. Okay, let's see what the Gemara says here. The Gemara says, Tanya Abba Binyamin Omer, Al Shnei Dvarim Hayisi Mitzta'er Kol Yamai. Two things that I would be conscientious about, even to the point of difficulties. Al Tfilasi Shetei Lifnei Mitasi, that my prayer should be in front of my bed. V'al Mitasi Shetei Nesuna Ben Tafel Dharma, that my bed be placed between the north and the south. Now, Al Tfilasi Shetei Lifnei Mitasi, my lifnei mitasi. What does that mean? Ilay lifnei mitasi mamash means literally to pray in front of your bed. V'amar Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Rav, Yitem Rabbi Yeshua ben Lakish, no, Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. How do we know that when you're praying, you should pray directly in front of the wall with nothing interrupting you? Like it brings a proof text that Chizkiyahu, the king, prayed in front of the wall. So the Gemara explains, don't say it's literally where the bed was located, that he prayed in front of the bed, but rather he prayed time, meaning soon after getting up. Okay. Now, so what are these two modalities of prayer? One is that you should pray before you take care of yourself, meaning you get up in the morning, and this is something I have trouble with. I do not pray right away when I get up in the morning. I take my time. I do a lot of stuff before praying. But nevertheless, he's telling us, in fact, there's a machlokas Rashi and Tosfos if this means one should have not studied Torah. That's what Rashi says, and Tosfos argues that you can study Torah before davening. In other words, how important is it to daven right away? Why would you have to daven before everything else? A few reasons. One is because davening represents Kabbalah Sol Malchus Shemayim, like accepting the yoke of heaven. And if you don't do that, so then everything else you do is either going to be selfish or could be selfish. That could be one reason. The other thing is davening also comes from the root of acknowledging the gift that God gave you. When you get up in the morning is like the most miraculous part of the day, because you can actually open your eyes, get up out of bed, as opposed to when you are not well, for example, staying in bed is a bummer. It's a very difficult thing. So, therefore, acknowledging the gift of life, the gift of your health, should be done immediately. Shouldn't wait, because once you do other things, that sense of satisfaction that you have early in the morning by getting up will be diminished by the busyness of your day. But what does it mean to pray direct? So that's in time, but in terms of location, you have to find a comfortable place to pray so that you're not distracted. In fact, it's brought down that you shouldn't, pray in front of perhaps stuff. Maybe the stuff takes away your focus. When there's nothing between you and the wall, it's, hey, listen, our favorite place to pray is at the Western Wall. So maybe there's maybe Jews have a thing for walls and prayer. So, but what it really has to do with a sense of a direct connection to God that's not getting blocked by stuff, so to speak. And what that might mean is stuff could be a metaphor not just for your table and your chairs and your furniture and your luggage and your clothes, but it could be, are your things getting in the way of your prayer? Anyway, that's number 9. We're going to conclude with number 10, praying for yourself, by yourself, or for a friend and with a friend. The last thing the Gemara talks about at the bottom of Daf Hey Amud Beis is that, let's say you go to a synagogue and the synagogue is out of the way and it's kind of like in a dangerous neighborhood, and you're praying, you finish, and you have a friend who's still there, and you're like, you know what, I gotta go. I'm out of here, and bye. And he's still there, she's still there, and now you put them in this kind of unsafe predicament. The Gemara says not only is your prayer not heard, you also cause the Shekhinah to depart, which seems kind of like okay, you're not a nice person. You should have waited for your friend, but you caused the Shekhinah to depart. So what this, upon closer inspection, what this really could mean is that there's two types of prayer. One is you pray because you need something, and you're praying for whatever you need. The other thing is that you're praying not just for yourself. You're praying. It's a Gemara says, I believe it's a Gemara. Kol mispal ba'ad chavero. Whoever prays for somebody else, that person's prayer will be heard first. The question is why, and the answer that's given by the Baal Shem Tov is that if you think of everyone as being like a twig or a branch on a huge tree with bigger branches that we're all coming out of, when you pray for yourself, the distance between, let's say, the energy that's coming from the base of the tree to reach you takes longer than because it's going to you're a way out limb. But if you're praying for somebody else, so then you're praying for a more primary part of the tree, the nourishment, the spiritual light will reach you sooner. So that's perhaps what this Gemara means. If your modality of prayer is self-absorbed, not only are your prayer is not going to be answered, you don't know anything about prayers if it's just about you. You're not really creating a Shekhinah field for the Kalal. But if you wait for somebody else, meaning you want to be there with somebody else when you buy the Hanukkah menorah, you're saying, God, I want to be here together with the people I love next year, then you increase the Shekhinah. Thank you for watching. Have a great day.